1313, it's not a curse, but a power. From Jung to quantum physics, how you create reality. You look at the clock exactly at 11:11. You get a text from a person you were just thinking about. You hear a song on the radio that was the soundtrack to an important moment in your life, and at that very moment, the traffic light turns green and the license plate of the car in front of you contains your date of birth. Coincidence, luck, magic. We are used to dismissing these moments as random, or, conversely, to see them as mystical signs. But what if I told you that this is not magic? That this phenomenon has a name, a history, and, most importantly, a scientific explanation rooted in the most advanced areas of human knowledge, from depth psychology to quantum mechanics. This is the story of how the universe can communicate with us in the language of coincidences, a language that is understandable to our subconscious. This is the story of synchronicity. When you first saw the time 1313 on a digital clock display, your heart probably skipped a beat for a split second. You didn't immediately understand what it meant, but an inner feeling arose, as if something important was happening. Perhaps you were deep in thought, perhaps going through a difficult period, or maybe you were just sitting on public transport, staring out the window. But at the moment the numbers 1313 flashed before you, your consciousness seemed to click for a moment and you felt that this was not a coincidence. Something in your soul responded. This feeling is impossible to describe in words, but everyone who has ever seen 1313 knows it. It's the feeling that the universe is whispering to you, I am here, I am with you, and you are on the right path. But what does this number actually mean? Why 1313? Why not 1212, not 1414? Why 13? And why does it appear precisely when you are thinking about something important or when you feel it's time to change your life? Is it a coincidence? A curse? Or is it something more, a key to understanding how our reality works? Hundreds of thousands of people worldwide report seeing repeating numbers, especially 1111, 1212, 20-22, and, of course, 1313. Some consider it a sign of fate, others a superstition. But more and more often, scientists, psychologists, and philosophers are beginning to view these phenomena not as coincidences, but as manifestations of the deep laws of the universe. In this text, we will try to understand what really stands behind the number 1313, why it appears so often in our lives, and how it is connected to concepts like synchronicity, quantum physics, and human creative power. Synchronicity is not magic, it's science. The word synchronicity was introduced into scientific use by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. He was not just a psychiatrist, he was a thinker, an explorer of the human soul, standing at the intersection of science and mysticism. His concept of synchronicity emerged from years of observing how events occur in people's lives that are not causally related but have deep meaning. Jung wrote, "Synchronicity is the coincidence of two or more events where a meaningful connection is observed, despite the absence of a causal link between them." That is, if you think about a person you haven't spoken to in a long time, and a few minutes later you receive a message from them, that's not just a coincidence. It's synchronicity. It's a manifestation of your consciousness and the external world being in resonance. Jung came to this idea while working with patients who told him about strange coincidences. They had dreams featuring symbols, and the next day those symbols appeared in real life. Or they would think about something important, and then, as if by magic, an event would occur that confirmed their thoughts. He did not deny these phenomena. He did not call them magic or superstition. He tried to understand why they happen. And he came to the conclusion there exists a collective unconscious, a deep level of the psyche common to all people, where archetypes, symbols, and images are stored. And when you activate an archetype in your consciousness, for example, the archetype of transition, beginning, liberation, the external world responds. It begins to send you signs. And one of the most powerful signs is a number. Carl Jung and the birth of the concept. Meaningful coincidences. Our journey begins in the office of the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung. A student of Freud, he went his own way, focusing not on libido and childhood traumas, but on the deep layers of the psyche, those that are common to all humanity. He called this the collective unconscious, a vast repository of archetypes, symbols, and universal narratives. It was Jung in the 1920s who encountered a phenomenon that did not fit within the framework of classical science. His patients told him about dreams that literally materialized the next day in reality, about chance meetings that radically changed their lives, about symbols that persistently repeated both in their inner world and in the external one. Jung realized that these were not just statistical errors. It was something else. He formulated the concept of synchronicity. Synchronicity is a causal connecting principle, meaning a meaningful coincidence of external and internal events that are not causally related to each other. Let's break down this definition. 1. A causal, meaning having no causal connection. That is, one event is not the cause of the other. Your thought about a friend did not make them call. The book did not fall because you thought about it. This is a key difference from the physics we are used to. 2. Meaningful coincidence. The subjective response is important here. The two events coincide not just randomly, but precisely for you. They carry meaning, they resonate with your inner state. For one person, the number 1313 is just a time. For another, who is going through a transformation at that moment, it is a powerful sign of strength and change. 3. External and internal. This is the junction of the objective world, a call, a fallen book, and the subjective world, your thought, your feeling, your dream. Jung saw in synchronicity a manifestation of a universal order, a hidden symmetry of the universe, which manifests through meaning, not through causality. He compared it to two clocks ticking in unison, but not mechanically connected. Once, Jung had a patient who was too rational, stuck in rigid frameworks of logic. She was telling him a dream in which she was given a golden scarab, an ancient Egyptian symbol of transformation. At that moment, an insect tapped on the window of the office. Jung opened the window, caught it, and handed it to the patient. It was a rosechafer Cetonia or Otta, the closest analog of a scarab found in that area. This a causal but incredibly meaningful coincidence broke through the armor of the patient's rationality and allowed the therapy to move forward. Bridge between sciences. From psychology to physics, Jung was not alone in his search. He found an incredible ally in one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, Wolfgang Pauli, a Nobel Prize laureate. Their collaboration gave rise to the book Interpretation of Nature and the Psyche. Pauli, a genius of physics, suffered from the fact that equipment in his laboratory constantly broke down as soon as he appeared. Jokingly, this phenomenon was called the Pauli effect. But the scientist himself saw in this a strange connection between his inner emotional state, often negative, and external events in the laboratory. He felt that the strict determinism of classical physics could not explain the full complexity of the universe. Their dialogue was brilliant. Jung was looking for physical foundations for mental phenomena, and Pauli was looking for a place for the psyche in the physical picture of the world. They concluded that the mental and the physical are two sides of the same coin, complementary realities stemming from a single, deeper order in Jus Mutus, one world. Key idea: synchronicity is a rip in the fabric of cause and effect reality, through which this single, fundamental order shines through. And here we come to the most interesting part: quantum physics. What was a hypothesis for psychology became harsh working reality for quantum mechanics. The quantum revolution. How physics explains the impossible. Welcome to the strange, counterintuitive, and stunningly beautiful world of quantum mechanics. Here, our usual ideas about reality crumble to dust. And it is here that we find the most compelling scientific parallels with synchronicity. 1. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and the observer. In the classical world, a ball flies along a predictable trajectory. In the quantum world, an elementary particle, for example, an electron, exists as a wave of probabilities. It is not at a specific point but is smeared in space, representing a set of potential states. This is called superposition. But then you decide to measure its position. and a miracle happens, the wave function collapses. The particle chooses one specific point where it appears. The very act of observation, of measurement, affects reality. Your consciousness, your attention, your intention, this is the observer. When you focus on something, your goal, your desire, your question, you, in a sense, collapse the wave function of reality around you, attracting events that resonate with your request. You are not commanding the universe, but simply tuning into one of its countless probabilities. 2. Quantum entanglement. This is perhaps the most mystical phenomenon in physics. Two particles, for example, photons, can be entangled, meaning their properties become fundamentally interconnected. What happens if we separate these particles to opposite ends of the galaxy and measure the state of one of them? At that very instant, the second particle will assume a correlated state. Information is transmitted faster than the speed of light. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. Synchronicity is a kind of entanglement between your inner state, a thought, a feeling, and an external event. They are connected not by energy or causality, but by meaning. They are two entangled particles of a single field of reality. 3. The holographic universe theory. Some physicists like David Bohm, a colleague of Einstein, suggested that our visible universe is merely a holographic projection of a deeper, implicate order. In this model, every part contains information about the whole. Every point in space-time is connected to all other points. In a holographic universe, coincidences cease to be something surprising. If everything is connected to everything at a fundamental level, then synchronicities are simply moments when this connection becomes especially obvious to our perception. Neuroscience and biology. Why do we even notice these coincidences? Alright, suppose synchronicity is a real phenomenon of the universe. But why do we, humans, notice it? The answer lies in the structure of our brain. Our brain is a magnificent pattern recognition machine. This was a key survival mechanism, to see in the stripes in the grass not just lines, but the pattern of a tiger's skin. To hear in the rustle of leaves not just a sound, but the pattern of approaching danger. This function is largely handled by the reticular activating system RAS, a kind of internal filter of your consciousness. It filters the avalanche of information that hits our senses every second and allows into the focus of consciousness only what it considers important. How does it decide what is important? Based on your beliefs, your goals, your current emotional state. A simple example, you decide to buy a red car, and suddenly the world explodes with red cars. They were always there, but your RAS considered them irrelevant and filtered them out. Now that red car has become an important marker, the RAS starts letting this information through, creating the illusion that there are more of these cars. But with synchronicity, it's deeper. It's not just about filtering. It's about the fact that our brain, our organism, is a complex receiver tuned to resonate with the surrounding world. Our hearts generate a powerful electromagnetic field that can influence other people and the environment. Our neurons do not work in isolation, but in a complex rhythm that can synchronize with external rhythms. We are biologically programmed to be part of this network. Synchronicity is not an anomaly. It is a sign of our deep and real connection with the whole. Practice? How to learn to see, hear, and use the language of synchronicity theory is great. But what should we, ordinary people, do with all this in everyday life? How to stop being blind to the signals of the universe and become an active participant in this dialogue. Here is a practical algorithm based on a scientific approach. Step 1. Awareness and intention calibrating your observer. You cannot notice signs if you are immersed in automatic thoughts. The first step is to slow down. Start paying attention to the present moment. Formulate a clear intention, question, or goal for yourself. Remember the collapse of the wave function. Your clear intention is that very act of observation that begins to attract resonant events. Step 2. Developing sensitivity, tuning your receiver. Keep a synchronicity journal. Write down everything that seems like a strange coincidence to you. Numbers, names, meetings, images from dreams. Over time, you will begin to see not individual dots but entire patterns. Meditate. Meditation is not an escape from reality. It is a way to quiet the internal dialogue so that your RAS becomes more sensitive to subtle signals. Ask. If you are at a dead end, simply mentally ask the universe, give me a sign, show me the direction, and then let go of the expectation. Relax. The answer almost always comes when you stop waiting tensely. Step 3. Interpretation, decoding the code. There is no universal dictionary here. The meaning of a sign is always subjective. Ask yourself, what does this mean personally for me? What feeling does it evoke in me? What is the first association that comes to mind? Your subconscious, your access to that very collective unconscious of Jung, knows the answer. Step 4. Action and trust, closing the loop. Saw a sign, understood it. Act accordingly, even if it seems illogical. Make that call, buy that book, turn off your usual route. And most importantly, trust the process. Trust is the very frequency on which synchronicity operates. Fear and control block it. Synchronicity on the scale of life. From numbers to fate, synchronicity is not only about 11:11 on the clock. It is much grander. It is a mechanism that can guide your entire life. In career, a chance meeting in an elevator that leads to a dream job offer. In love, the story of how do people end up in the same place at the same time after a chain of seemingly random events. In creativity, an artist sees a broken branch and it gives birth to an idea for a new work. A scientist sees the structure of the benzene ring in a dream and it makes a breakthrough in chemistry, the real story of Friedrich Kekel. When you start living in the flow of synchronicities, you understand that the concept of chance loses its meaning. It is replaced by the concept of meaning formation. Your life becomes not a series of random events, but an exciting quest where the universe places clues for you. You cease to be a passive passenger and become a navigator who can read the map of signs. From magic to awareness, so is synchronicity magic-y? No. It's much cooler. Magic is something external, unknowable, given to the chosen few. Synchronicity is a fundamental property of our reality, accessible to everyone. It is a bridge between the internal and the external, between consciousness and matter, between man and the universe. This is not a call to abandon logic. It is an invitation to expand it, to acknowledge that our reality is much more wonderful, complex, and meaningful than we are used to thinking. The next time you see repeating numbers, meet a random person, or receive a timely sign, don't brush it off. Stop. Feel. Ask yourself, what is the universe trying to tell me? Because the most important conclusion from all this is this: you are not a separate cog in a soulless machine of the universe. You are an active, conscious co-creator of your reality, constantly in dialogue with the whole. And this dialogue is conducted in the language of synchronicities. It's time to start practicing it. The number 13 has been considered unlucky for centuries. In Christianity, it was associated with betrayal. It was the 13th guest at the Last Supper, who was Judas. In Western culture, the 13th of the month falling on a Friday is considered a particularly unlucky day. But if we distract ourselves from these superstitions and look at the number 13 through the eyes of ancient cultures, we see a completely different picture. For the Maya, the number 13 was sacred. They had 13 levels of heaven, 13 months in their calendar year. For the Native Americans of North America, the number 13 also played an important role. It symbolized a complete cycle, completion, and the beginning of a new stage. In Kabbalah, the number 13 is associated with the 13 attributes of God's mercy. In some yoga traditions, they speak of 13 chakras, including higher energy centers associated with spiritual awakening. Thus, the number 13 is not a symbol of evil or a curse. It is a number of completion, transition, activation. It is a number that says, the cycle is complete. It's time to move to a new level. Now imagine 13 twice. This is not just a repetition. It is an amplification. It is a doubling of energy. It is as if the universe is telling you, you are not just ready for change. You are already in the process. Quantum physics and the creative power of consciousness. Modern science is increasingly confirming what was once considered mysticism. In quantum physics, there is the concept of a quantum field, an invisible but real existing space in which everything in the universe interacts. This is not just a metaphor, it is a scientific fact. In quantum mechanics, it has been proven that particles can be entangled with each other even if they are millions of kilometers apart. A change in the state of one particle instantly affects the other. This phenomenon is called quantum entanglement. It has also been proven that observation affects the behavior of particles. As long as you are not looking, the particle is in a state of superposition, meaning it is simultaneously in all possible states. But as soon as you start observing, it chooses one state. This means that consciousness influences reality. This is exactly what happens when you see the number 1313. Your thoughts, feelings, intentions, these are waves that propagate through the quantum field. And when you reach a certain level of awareness, your consciousness begins to resonate with this field. And then the universe responds, sends you signs. And one of the most powerful signs is 1313, mirror numbers, codes of creative potential. If you pay attention, you will notice that not only 1313 appears in your life, you often see other mirror numbers, 1111, 20 to 22 for 04. Each of them carries its own energy. 1111 is activation. It is the moment when you get a green light from the universe. It is a sign that you are on the right path. 20 to 22 is realization. It is the moment when your ideas begin to be embodied in reality. 1313 is transition. It is the moment when you exit the old reality and enter a new one. These numbers are codes of creative potential. They appear when your consciousness is ready for the next stage. And the more you become aware of yourself, the more often you will see these numbers. How to use 1313 in your life. The next time you see 1313, don't ignore it. Stop. Close your eyes. Feel the moment. Ask yourself, what are you trying to tell me? What step should I take? What do I need to realize? Then open a notebook and write down what comes to mind. It could be a thought, an idea, a name, a place, a sensation. This is your personal journal of synchronicities. Over time, you will see patterns. You will understand that 1313 appears when you are ready for change. And most importantly, act. If you feel that something needs to change, do it. Even a small step can change your life. 1313 is not a curse. It is a signal. It is confirmation. It is an invitation. It is the love of the universe for you. When you see this number, it means that you are not alone. You are part of a cosmic process. You are the creator of your reality. And every time you see 1313, you get the opportunity to recreate your life. And if you are reading these lines right now, it means you are already inside this process. You are already on the verge of awakening. When you see 1313, it is not the end. It is the beginning. Stories that change perception. Let's talk about real stories of people who saw 1313 and their lives really changed. These stories are not fictional. They happen to real people, and each of them is proof that synchronicities are not random but are part of a deep process in which we are all involved. The first story is about a woman named Anna. She worked as an accountant in a small firm and felt stuck. It seemed to her that her life was an endless cycle: work, home, sleep. And then one day, at 1313, she saw the time on the clock. At that same moment, a thought flashed through her head: you can do more. You shouldn't be here. A week later, she quit. A month later, she started training to become a psychologist. A year later, she opened her own practice. She says, 1313 became the starting point of a new life for me. The second story is about a man from St. Petersburg. He was going through a difficult divorce, lost contact with his children, and was depressed. And one day, at 1313, he saw the time on his phone screen. At that moment, he heard a voice: "You are not alone. Everything will be fine." He didn't believe in voices, but this feeling did not leave him. He started meditating, reading self-development books. 6 months later, he restored contact with his children. He says, 1313 became a sign for me that I am not forgotten. The third story is about a young girl who was looking for a job. She sent her resume to dozens of companies, but no one responded. And then, on the day she was almost ready to give up, at 13:13 she saw the time. At that moment, she received a call from the company she dreamed of working for. They said, "We found your resume and would like to invite you for an interview." She says, "I know why this happened. It was 13:13. These stories are not unique. They happen thousands of times a day all over the world. And each of them has one common feature: the moment a person sees 1313 becomes a turning point. Scientific explanation of synchronicities. Many people, hearing about synchronicities, immediately brush it off. It's all subjective perception. Our brain just looks for patterns where there are none. And to some extent they are right. But only to some extent. Modern neuroscience shows that our brain is indeed prone to finding patterns. This is called apophenia, the tendency to see meaningful connections in random data. But there is an important nuance here. Not all synchronicities can be explained by apophenia. When a person sees 1313 and 5 minutes later receives a call from a person they were thinking about an hour before, that's not just a pattern. It is a coincidence with deep meaning. And such coincidences happen too often to be dismissed as chance. Moreover, research in the field of psychophysiology shows that during moments of strong emotional experiences, a person's bioelectric field changes. The heart begins to beat in a different rhythm, the brain produces different neurotransmitters, and the level of coherence between different parts of the body increases. This state is called a resonance state. It is in this state that a person becomes more receptive to external signals. They seem to tune into a certain frequency, and then the universe begins to answer them through numbers, coincidences, meetings. Quantum mechanics and consciousness. One of the most interesting directions in modern physics is the study of the role of consciousness in quantum processes. Experiments conducted in laboratories around the world show that observation affects the behavior of quantum particles. In the famous double-slit experiment, scientists discovered that when a particle is not observed, it behaves like a wave. It passes through both slits simultaneously. But as soon as it is observed, it chooses one slit. This means that consciousness influences physical reality. But that's not all. In the 1990s, a group of scientists led by Dean Radin conducted a series of experiments in which people with a high level of awareness tried to influence random number generators. The results were astounding. During moments of strong concentration and emotional tension, the generators began to produce non-random sequences. This proves that human consciousness can influence physical processes. And if so, then why not assume that it can also influence the appearance of numbers in our lives? Archetypes and the collective unconscious. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a deep level of the psyche common to all people. This unconscious stores archetypes, universal images and symbols that manifest in myths, dreams, religions, and cultures of different peoples. One of the most powerful archetypes is the hero archetype, who goes through trials, dies, and is reborn. It is this archetype that is activated when a person sees 1313. This number becomes a symbol of transition from an old life to a new one. When you see 1313, you activate the archetype of transition within yourself. You are as if telling your unconscious, "I am ready for change." And then your unconscious begins to work, sending you signs, hints, coincidences. This explains why 1313 appears precisely when you are thinking about something important, because at that moment you activate an archetype and the universe responds. Numbers in different cultures. Interestingly, the number 13 appears in different cultures as a symbol of transition and completion. In ancient Egyptian tradition, there was talk of 13 spheres of dew at the underworld through which the soul passes after death. In Celtic mythology, 13 is the number of priests, keepers of ancient knowledge. In Hinduism, 13 is the number of forms of Shiva, including his destructive and creative aspects. But the Mayan tradition is especially interesting. They had calendars, solar 365 days and sacred 260 days. The sacred calendar had 13 months of 20 days each. Each month began with the number 1 and ended with 13. Thus, the number 13 for the Maya was a symbol of the completion of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. This confirms our hypothesis. 1313 is not just a repetition of a number. It is an amplification of the energy of transition. It is as if the universe is telling you, you are not just completing a cycle, you are ready for a new level. Mindfulness practices and working with numbers. If you want to learn to work with numbers, including 1313, it is important to develop awareness. This is not just a buzzword, it is a real skill that can be developed. The first practice is observation. When you see 1313, don't ignore it, stop. Feel the moment. Ask yourself, what does this mean for me? Write down your thoughts. Over time, you will begin to notice patterns. The second practice is meditation on numbers. You can visualize the numbers 1313, feel their energy, imagine how they rotate in your body, how they connect with your heart, with your consciousness. This helps tune into the frequency of the number. The third practice is working with intention. Before going to bed, you can tell yourself, I'm ready to see signs. I'm ready for change. And then, when you see 1313, you will know that it is not a coincidence but a response to your intention. The human biofield and resonance. Modern research in the field of bioenergetics shows that a person has a biofield and energy shell that interacts with the environment. This field can be measured with special devices, and it really exists. When a person is under stress, their biofield becomes chaotic. When they are relaxed, the field acquires a more ordered structure. And when they reach a state of deep awareness, their field begins to resonate with the surrounding space. It is in this state that a person becomes a receiver of external signals. They seem to tune into a certain frequency, and then the universe begins to answer them through numbers, coincidences, meetings. This explains why 1313 appears precisely when you are ready for change. Because at that moment your biofield resonates with the frequency of transition. Astrology and the number 13. In astrology, the number 13 also has deep meaning. In some systems of astrology, they speak of 13 zodiac signs, including the constellation Ophiuchus, which is traditionally not taken into account in Western astrology. Ophiuchus is a sign of transition, transformation, healing. It is associated with the energy of Shiva, the destroyer and creator. When a person enters the energy of Ophiuchus, they go through a process of death of the old self and birth of the new. Interestingly, in some astrological systems, the 13th sign is activated at certain periods of life when a person is ready for deep change. And it is during these periods that people most often begin to see 1313. The chronology of number appearances in a person's life. If you start keeping a journal of synchronicities, you will notice that numbers appear in your life not randomly. They follow a certain chronology. Usually it all starts with the numbers 1111. This is the green light from the universe. Then 1212 appears. This is preparation for change. Then 1313. This is the moment of transition. And finally 2022. This is realization. This sequence reflects the cycle of creation, awakening, preparation, transition, realization. And each stage has its own number. Psychological aspects of number perception. From a psychological point of view, the perception of numbers is associated with the process of integration, the unification of the conscious and the unconscious. When a person sees 1313, they seem to remember something important that was forgotten in the depths of their psyche. This explains why such numbers evoke deep emotions. They activate archetypes that are stored in the collective unconscious. And when these archetypes are activated, a person begins to remember their true nature. Philosophical reflections on reality. If we look at all this from a philosophical point of view, we come to an interesting conclusion. Reality is not just the physical world. It is an information field in which everything is connected to everything else. In this field, we are not just observers. We are creators. Our thoughts, feelings, intentions influence the structure of reality. And when we reach a certain level of awareness, we begin to see how this structure responds to us. The number 1313 is one of the languages in which the universe communicates with us. These are not just numbers on a screen. It is a message. It is confirmation. It is love. Practical recommendations if you want to learn to work with 1313. Here are some practical recommendations. 1. Keep a journal of synchronicities. Write down when and where you see 1313, what was happening at that moment, what thoughts you had. 2. Develop awareness. Practice meditation, yoga, breathing exercises. The more aware you become, the more often you will see signs. 3. Work with intention. Before going to bed, tell yourself, I am ready to see signs. I am ready for change. And then, when you see 1313, you will know it is not a coincidence. 4. Act. When you receive a sign, don't ignore it. Take a step. Even a small step can change your life. 5. Give thanks. When you see 1313, thank the universe. This strengthens the connection between you and the information field. Conclusion: you are part of a cosmic process. 1313 is not a curse. It is light. It is power. It is your personal channel of communication with the universe. When you see this number, it means that you are not alone. You are part of a cosmic process. You are the creator of your reality. And every time you see 1313, you get the opportunity to recreate your life. And if you are reading these lines right now, it means you are already inside this process. You are already on the verge of awakening. Thank you for being with me. See you soon. And remember, when you see 1313, it is not the end. It is the beginning. You are a creator. You are part of the cosmos. And you are never alone. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video if it was useful and interesting for you. Share your stories of synchronicities in the comments. What signs have you encountered? How did they change your life? See you soon in our space of awareness.